All right, my
So
brother.
what comes to mind when you hear Black with No Chaser?
I love it, man, because I think that it's a medium that we can speak truth and that we can have straight talk. And sometimes it's going to take straight talk to deal with our situation because we're in a nefarious crisis right now. And I think that we should have a platform that we can speak truth to the highest degree.
I mean, it's just being frank. It's just real talk. You know, when I see Black with No Chaser, you know, we finna get to it. It's the real deal. No sugarcoating, just right to it.
Being that you have such a reach, I thank you for putting me on, man.
For sure. And you know, we always ask folks when they first come on here, man, because it's like a tradition. You know, we started doing this the first season we started. And the question is right there in front of you. You can see it. What comes to mind when you hear Black with No Chaser?
With no chaser. Pure, hardcore. The real. You know what I mean?
The real.
Yeah, man, the essence, the real essence.
Thank you so much for your time. And the first question I'm going to ask you before we jump into this interview is, what comes to mind when you hear Black with No Chaser?
Thank you for having me, Sika. I love the title, by the way. The name of the show. It's Black. It's like being Black and unapologetically Black.
Yes.
And so that's what I'm about, and that's what my work is about.
I love it. Yes, that's definitely what your work is about. I think it is incredible that you are on the grounds in New Orleans showing us the truth about death. And I understand when I was watching the trailer, there was one particular line that stuck with me when someone said, we are the last responders. That's right. I found that very, very unique. So let's get into it. Death is our business. Mm-hmm. What prompted this, and how did you feel once you figured out that you were going to be able to be behind the scenes documenting this monumental moment?
Yeah, well, the project came along out of a fellowship. I'm a fellow with the Firelight Media, and it was a fellowship between Frontline and Firelight, really about bringing more diversity to Frontline Productions. And Frontline, they've been really wonderful to work with and totally embrace the idea. They love the film and are really supporting it in a way that I'm excited about. I came to the topic because my godmother, Frances Jordan, died during the pandemic, and it was early in the pandemic. I stopped traveling March the 15th, and she passed away, if not that day, the day before. And I wasn't able to go to her funeral, and my godmother has 10 children. She's very beloved in the community, and so it was just her children there at her gravesite. It was a very quiet funeral, and I knew that there would be plenty of people there acknowledging her life and the value of her life. And it made me think about, there are so many ways as Black folks that we're not acknowledged, just in our day-to-day, and how important it is for our loved ones to come together and really show how much their beloved family members who have deceased, how much they mean to them. And also I was keenly aware of the ripple effects around outside of the family, across communities around death. So I started to look at this idea, and I thought about how important it is the way that Black people uniquely funeralize their loved ones, the things that we do that come in our connection to Africa, that come out of African American traditions, and that come out of our spiritual traditions. And so I wanted to look at that while also exploring these issues that are hugely important around the disproportionate rate at which we are impacted by the pandemic, financially, economically, but also in terms of the infection and death rate.
So how difficult was it actually trying to get all of this actually documented, considering all of the social distancing and everything in between?
There were precautions that I took with my crew. I didn't want to put the folks that I'm working with in danger, including myself and the people that I was filming with. And the folks on the ground in New Orleans, like Jasmine Navarre at Rhodes and Louis Charbonnet and all the other people that I filmed with are also thinking about those same things. And so it was really great to be able to collaborate with my crew and with them to not just tell a story that I think is really needed, but also to do it in a way that everyone's healthy and safe. And that we're also respecting the families who were there in the midst of really difficult times and a lot of grief. So I was really careful about those things.
So I definitely credit New Orleans for teaching us the correct way to send someone off, because we are
Yes.
always, in an assumption that we need to be in a low vibrational mood. And of course, in New Orleans, I definitely respect the fact that it's a celebration of life, truly. So being able to experience and document the jazz and giving the experience to these people experiencing death in a pandemic, was there a different type of celebration or revelation considering the pandemic happening?
There are lots of revelations, and I try to be open when I'm on the ground to see those. Even outside of New Orleans, Black folks have wakes, and we have a repast, and so those are also those celebratory moments. What I thought about when I thought about where to set the film is how vibrant New Orleans is, and how electric the music is, and it's just visually like this really wonderful buffet of images, and it can really connect you around a story in the way that Black folks similarly will bury their loved ones in similar ways in other parts of the country, but it's just much more overt. The ways that African traditions and the jazz tradition is steeped into the funeral practice in New Orleans.
So tell me about like one of the most memorable moments of documenting this, because I know the memories, they're surpassing each other. It's too many. But can you tell me about one that just sticks out, that sticks with you every day?
Sure. You mentioned earlier Stephanie Simon, who's the woman who says, that was her line. She says that we are the last responders, right?
Right.
And Stephanie is an embalmer who is working at Rhodes and who was working at Charbonnet prior to that. And so she has a sense, and she works independently with a lot of funeral homes in New Orleans as well. She has. And so she's a really, through her, you could see really well the depth of the trauma of the pandemic for New Orleans, particularly in those early months in March, April, May. Stephanie worked nonstop, and I can't remember the number, but I feel like it's at least 30 days, and it was around the clock. And funeral directors, I just talked to Jasmine yesterday, and they're still having 14 funerals a week, which is far beyond, it exceeds what's normal. And so I was just really, really struck. I think about how much it affects me and how much it affected me and people that I know, right? But for funeral homes, it's just so much more profound to not only have to deal with the trauma of infection rate and deaths and worrying about your family in the same way that we do, but it's constant, and it's also with the perspective and the desire to take care of folks in the community and to be there for them. And so it really has been, even more so than usual, a really selfless act to continue to do the work. And there were funeral homes that did not make the transition from the pandemic, that closed down because they couldn't handle the capacity. And that's understandable as well. And they were concerned about their health to some, and some temporarily closed. But funeral homes like Charbonnet and like Rhodes and like Professional and the other funeral homes that the folks that I encountered at funeral homes are really committed to being there through the most difficult time, not just for families, but for the city, like citywide.
So you said something very important, because it led straight into my next question. How do you mentally prepare for all of this? Because it's a lot. There's nothing light about this, documenting it or just even being on hand in the front lines of it.
Yeah, I generally don't take on light subjects. I like films that are complex and that are really getting to the heart of the issues in the way that mainstream media might not necessarily approach it. And so I actually, part of the process for me is moving through and being present emotionally and as a director with those stories. And it can be difficult. The beautiful thing about it is I went to undergrad in New Orleans, and New Orleans is a second home for me. I grew up in Mississippi, an hour and a half away, and I have friends and family who have lived there at certain points. And
you said you grew up in Mississippi?
Mm-hmm, in Hattiesburg, Mississippi.
I'm from Mississippi. I'm from Jackson. Yes.
Are you really?
Yes.
I should have guessed that from your accent. You have a little bit of a Jackson accent, which I really
absolutely.
I love and I miss. I tell people all the time, like, there's so many different Mississippi accents, there's a specific Jackson one that I really love.
It is, absolutely. So I think that is very unique.
It is. And so to do that film in New Orleans was my way of giving back to the community that has embraced me, to my alma mater. And so you see Xavier University is where I graduated undergrad, and Dr. Barrett, who's the president of Xavier University, plays a wonderful role in the film. And then Xavier was kind enough to provide support for me in terms of interns. And so it was a really, the film was this gift to me, and to me to be able to process the things that I had been going through. But it's also, I feel like it's a way to memorialize all of the folks. It's an offering of a memorial to the folks who have died in the pandemic. And right now the number is over 500,000. And to not properly memorialize people, I mean, the very first time that there was a national memorial was in January, right around the presidential inauguration. And to not acknowledge this death, I think, is just really egregious. In addition to these issues that really account for the disproportionate rate that Black people and Indigenous people also very closely behind in terms of the proportion of impact around the pandemic, to not address these issues that have to do with healthcare, and that have to do with housing, that have to do with the economic position that people of color are in. To not do that and continue to not face that, I think is really, it's inhumane. And so the idea is that I bring all of this out, including the beauty and the strength and the power of the culture that Black people bring to their lives and to death.
That's the true definition of edutainment, because of course, us that are not familiar with the New Orleans culture, we're definitely going to be looking for the entertainment value. But of course, thankfully, you have tackled important issues that we need to be paying attention to. And I want to applaud you for doing that, because it's not easy to do so, especially dealing with such a heavy topic in itself. So with this being, with the pandemic happening literally a year ago this week, do you see this actually being a long-standing type of documentary series, because of the fact that we're still in it?
Yeah, I'm working on multiple projects at the same time, all the time, and so there are other subjects that I'm tackling. Yeah, but I love filmmaking, and so it's a joy in addition to my career. But there are filmmakers coming from different angles on the pandemic, and I think these stories are really important, and I think that they're especially important when they cover issues and lives and the stories of Black and Indigenous folks who are most profoundly impacted by the disease, and also by the ways that the issues have been handled.
Yes, absolutely. Well, we are definitely looking forward to this popping off on March 23rd. Am I correct on that?
It's March 23rd. It'll air on Frontline on PBS, so you can go to pbs.org, type in Death is Our Business, and you'll see what station it'll be covered on in your city, and also what time. And then it'll re-air nationally on the World Channel as well on the 24th.
Awesome. Jacqueline, thank you so much for your time. Us at Black No Chaser, we will be supporting this movement, as well as making sure that the audience is tuned in with Death is Our Business. Thank you so much for just sharing some insight on this. This is very important for us to have this conversation. Anytime.
And I'm really excited that you're doing this show. It's going to be on my radar now. And I love that you're from Mississippi, and however I can support your work anytime, I'm happy to.
Thank you so much. To be honest with you, Black with No Chaser is born out of Mississippi. It was born from 3 guys from Tougaloo College. So yes, Mississippi all day, every day.
I think I've heard this story now that you mention it. I've been tracking it a little bit.
Probably have.
Yeah, that's really great. Congratulations. It's really important.
Thank you so much.
What you're doing.
Congratulations to you as well. Thank you for all that you're doing.
Thank you.
Have a great one. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye-bye.
Really appreciate y'all. This has been one of the most amazing interviews I've ever done. My job as one of the OGs, and my teachers will tell you, my teachers started Duke Ellington, the first class of Duke Ellington in DC. They were revolutionaries. They were street kings and queens. Glenda Dickerson, I got to give homage. Mike Malone, Peggy Cooper Cafridge, Skipper Driscoll, Charles Organs. Well, he's still alive, God bless. Charles Brown, who saved interviews.
What are you listening to? It really actually doesn't matter. What you listening to? Oh, you need to be listening to Black with No Chaser Radio, clearly. So forgot about that.
Never forget.
Right.
Never forget.
My mistake.
Black with No Chaser Radio.
Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Gotta get to the money. Same shit again on the money. Gotta get to the money. Same shit again on the money.
Same shit again on.
Oh, I like this Black with No Chaser radio station.
Never forget.
This is a human condition, right? This is a human suffering that we're seeing in Portsmouth, in Greene County, in SNCI, in Wilkinson County, all throughout this state, y'all. We've been focusing on Portsmouth, but we cannot forget about all the rest of our brothers and sisters throughout. Do we understand that?
Unapologetically black, capital A, capital F. I love black women. Hennessy, Black with No Chaser.
What comes to mind is no cut cards. We're not holding back anything as black people, regardless of whatever the struggles, regardless of whatever pain, everything that we pretty much felt in 2020. Black with No Chaser represents we not holding nothing back 2021. Everything they said we couldn't get, we coming to get.
Really appreciate y'all. This has been one of the most amazing interviews I've ever done.